Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to look into the history of electricity and the men who helped shape America.
It should be a fascinating one.
It really should. We've got some really interesting stuff here, some excerpts from this History Channel documentary
Mhm.
about the rivalry between Edison and Tesla
Right.
and how J.P. Morgan managed to use it all to become, well, a titan of American industry.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild story.
It really is. It's got some pretty shocking twists and turns.
Mhm.
For instance, did you know that the first electric chair was actually, I guess, a PR stunt gone wrong involving Thomas Edison?
Really? Yeah, the way these inventions are all tied up with business and even morality, it's pretty remarkable. Really a turning point for America.
So let's set the scene a little bit. We're in the late 1800s,
Okay.
and America's economy is, well, it's exploding. You've got railroads, you've got steel, cities are growing like crazy.
Right.
But all this progress, it needs light.
Of course, yeah.
And that's where things get interesting. Now, kerosene was still king at this point, thanks to John D. Rockefeller.
Right.
But electricity, it was emerging as a, well, powerful contender.
How's the
Right.
technology like back then?
Well, you had two main types of electric current that were sort of competing. You had direct current,
Okay.
or DC. That was championed by Thomas Edison.
Hmm.
And then there was alternating current,
Okay.
or AC, which was being developed by George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla. And this difference, this wasn't just some technical detail. It was a major point of contention.
So you've got these two titans clashing. You've got Edison, the pragmatic inventor,
Yeah.
versus Tesla, who was, I mean, kind of this visionary genius.
Yeah. Yeah.
What were their approaches to electricity?
Well, Edison, he really focused on practicality, immediate applications.
Yeah.
Like he wanted to bring electric light to homes and businesses as quickly as possible, just get it out there working.
Make it happen.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Tesla, on the other hand.
He had a much grander vision.
Oh, okay.
Like he saw AC as the key to, I don't know, electrifying whole cities.
Wow.
Maybe even powering industries on a massive scale.
That's a huge difference in thinking.
Yeah, very different approaches.
But this current war, as it's called,
Mhm.
it wasn't just about better technology.
Yeah, definitely
It
not.
was a battle for dominance.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Dominance in this booming new industry. And that's where J.P. Morgan, he enters the picture.
The financier.
Yes, a rising financier. Sharp guy, very keen eye for opportunity.
Mhm.
He saw the potential of electricity to transform society,
Uh-huh.
and he put his money on Edison
Okay.
and DC current. It was about control, market share, and ultimately, well, profit.
And Edison, I got to say, I mean, he wasn't afraid to play dirty to win this thing.
No, he wasn't.
He launched a really aggressive campaign to discredit AC. He even went so far as to publicly electrocute animals
Yeah.
to demonstrate its dangers.
Mhm.
Didn't this lead to the invention of the electric chair?
Yes, actually it did. Edison thought he could prove that AC was super dangerous.
Right.
So he helped design an electric chair using Westinghouse's AC system for executions.
I mean, what were they thinking?
I know, it's pretty crazy looking back on it. At the time, electrocution was seen as this more humane way to carry out executions compared to hanging.
Okay.
But the first time they used it, oh, it was a gruesome spectacle.
Oh, no.
It was a disaster. William Kemmler, the first man sentenced to die in the electric chair,
Yeah,
he suffered a prolonged and horrific death.
it's awful.
It was a PR nightmare for Edison.
Well, that really backfired
Yeah.
in a big way.
Public opinion turned against him.
Hmm.
And J.P. Morgan, well, he was in a tough spot too. His own father, Junius Morgan,
Oh, right. Yeah.
he thought electricity was, and I quote, the devil's work.
Wow.
He really opposed his son's investment in the industry.
That's some family drama right there.
Yeah.
So it seems electricity, I mean, it was more than just this technological thing.
Oh, absolutely.
It was really a cultural thing, too.
Very much so.
So what happened next? What was the next major thing to happen in this whole story?
Well, in the middle of all this controversy,
Right.
there was a new opportunity, a chance to build the world's largest power plant at Niagara Falls.
Oh, wow.
Whoever won this contract, I mean, they'd be responsible for electrifying the Northeast.
Wow.
And their current, it would become the standard.
So in Niagara Falls, that becomes the ultimate prize
Yeah,
in this current war.
exactly.
That must have been really high stakes.
Oh, the competition was fierce. Westinghouse, I mean, He had arguably the better technology with AC,
Okay.
but he was having money problems, they were expanding quickly, and it was costing them.
Westinghouse was having financial troubles. That must have been tough on Tesla as well.
Oh, it was. I mean, Tesla, he was really committed to AC, to seeing his vision become reality. And he believed in Westinghouse. He thought they could pull it off.
Okay.
So when Westinghouse was on the verge of bankruptcy, Tesla, he did something drastic.
What did he do?
He tore up his contract, his royalty contract.
Wow.
Yeah, he essentially gave up a fortune to save the company, to keep their dream alive, I guess.
That's incredible. I mean, he must have been really sure about AC.
Oh, he was. And you know what? His sacrifice paid off. Westinghouse got back on track financially, and they managed to secure a huge win.
What was that?
They got to light the Chicago World's Fair, the one in 1893.
Wow. The Chicago World's Fair. I mean, that was like the showcase of technology and innovation.
It was, and they lit the whole thing up. Over 200,000 light bulbs, all powered by AC, by Westinghouse and Tesla's system. It was a spectacular display. It really captured people's imaginations.
What about J.P. Morgan? He had backed Edison and D.C., but AC was clearly winning. How did he react to all this?
Well, Morgan was a pragmatist. He could see what was happening.
Yeah.
He understood that AC was the future, so he made a bold move. I guess some might even call it ruthless. He bought out Thomas Edison.
He bought out Edison. Wow. Mr. Lightbulb himself.
Yep. Essentially pushed him out of his own company, Edison Electric.
So what happened to Edison?
Oh, he went on to invent other things. But his time in the electrical industry, I mean, it was pretty much over. Morgan, though, he took Edison Electric and merged it with another company. They formed General Electric.
The General Electric.
The one we know today, yeah.
Wow. So Morgan just switched sides.
I mean, he was a businessman. That's what he did.
He saw which way the wind was blowing.
Exactly. And with General Electric using AC, he was in a perfect position to dominate the industry, the very industry he had initially bet against.
But he didn't stop there, did he? I mean, didn't he use this Morganization strategy to consolidate his power even more?
You're right, he did. Morganization, that was his way of controlling entire industries. He'd consolidate companies, eliminate competition. It was all about maximizing profits.
Sounds pretty ruthless.
It was effective, but yeah, controversial for sure.
What was the impact of all this? Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. On the one hand, it did lead to greater efficiency, economic growth.
Okay.
But it also often meant layoffs, lower wages, and of course, less competition, which meant more wealth and power concentrated in the hands of a few.
It's giving robber baron vibes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a period of huge industrial growth, but there was a social cost. The gap between the rich and the poor, it just kept widening, and people started to resent these monopolies.
So while Morgan was building his empire, there was this growing backlash against him and others like him.
Oh, yeah. There was a real sense of anger at the way these big companies were operating. People were concerned about exploitation of workers, the lack of competition, and the influence these wealthy industrialists had on the government.
And this anger, it found a voice, didn't it?
It did. People like William Jennings Bryan, he was a politician, very charismatic.
Okay.
He rose to prominence during this era. He really championed the cause of the common man, campaigned on breaking up the trusts, fighting for economic equality.
It was like this clash of ideologies.
Exactly. The titans of industry, they saw themselves as building America, making it great,
Right.
But others saw them as exploiting workers, undermining fair competition. It's a debate that continues today.
It really does. It makes you think about the debates we have now about corporations, income inequality, government regulation.
It all has roots in this period of American history.
It's amazing how relevant all this still is.
Yeah.
But back to Morgan. I mean, he was at the peak of his power,
Oh, yeah.
influencing industries, the government even, right?
Absolutely. In fact, he even bailed out the U.S. Treasury in 1895.
He did.
Yeah, the country was in a bad economic crisis. Morgan, along with a group of other financiers, they stepped in, provided a huge loan, basically saved the American economy.
Wow. So you have J.P. Morgan, this titan of industry, this incredibly powerful figure, and now he's saving the government.
I know, right? It solidified his position as one of the most powerful men in the country. People called him, well, the banker's banker, even the country's banker.
Wow, that's a lot of power.
It was, and it generated a lot of scrutiny, a lot of opposition. The 1896 election was a big moment. William Jennings Bryan, with his populist message, his attacks on the trusts,
Yeah.
he was a real threat to people like Morgan.
To their power, you mean?
Yeah, to their power.
Yeah.
Morgan, Rockefeller, Carnegie, they all realized that this election could change everything.
So what did they do?
They decided to join forces, to use their wealth and their influence to, well, to manipulate the election.
Oh.
They backed William McKinley. They thought he'd be more favorable to their interests, and they poured money into his campaign.
They basically tried to buy the presidency.
Essentially, yeah. And
Right.
it worked. McKinley won. Bryan was defeated. But their victory, it was short-lived. People were still distrustful of these monopolies, of this concentration of wealth, and it eventually led to the Progressive Era and the push for antitrust laws.
So they might have won that particular battle.
Yeah,
But in the end, they kind of lost the war.
I guess you could say that. They helped create the very movement that would ultimately seek to limit their power. It's a reminder that too much power can backfire.
This has been fascinating. From the early days of electricity to the rise of J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, it's a complex story.
It really shows that the story of electricity, I mean, it's not just about flipping a switch.
Right.
It's about ambition, power, and the effects of technological change.
Absolutely. And the story doesn't end there. As we move into the 20th century, you have new innovations, new challenges, Henry Ford and the automobile. That's a whole other chapter.
Henry Ford
Yeah.
and Theodore Roosevelt.
Right. Roosevelt and his square deal. He really went after these titans, these monopolies, in a way they'd never seen before.
That's where we'll pick up in the final part of our deep dive. Okay, so last time we were talking about, the titans like J.P. Morgan. They had all this power,
Right. Yeah.
but a new century was coming with new inventors and, well, a new kind of president
Right.
who was ready to challenge the way things were. Let's talk about Henry Ford
Okay.
and how his vision for the automobile, well, how that changed everything.
Yeah, it's interesting how Ford's story kind of intersects with all these existing power structures.
Okay.
The Titans, they had control of all these vast industries, steel, oil, finance. Ford needed all of that to make his idea of, affordable cars for everyone, to actually make that happen.
So he was, I guess, reliant on them in a way,
In a way, yeah.
but he was also disrupting the whole system. That's got to create some tension.
It did. A lot of tension.
What was so different about Ford's approach? What made him so revolutionary?
He was all about efficiency, and mass production.
Right.
The Model T, I mean, it wasn't the first car, but it was the first one built on an assembly line, and that made it affordable for the average person.
So he created this huge demand.
He did. Huge demand for cars, obviously, but also for all the stuff that went into making them.
Okay, so steel for the bodies, rubber for the tires, and of course, fuel.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to, well, John D. Rockefeller, right?
Right. I mean, he had this enormous oil empire, but he was looking for a way to make gasoline actually profitable.
Because nobody was really using it much back then.
No, they weren't. It was pretty much a waste product, a byproduct of making kerosene. But then suddenly you have millions of Model Ts on the roads,
Wow.
and gasoline becomes the key to powering this new form of transportation.
So Ford didn't just disrupt transportation.
No.
He changed the whole energy industry.
Yeah. And Rockefeller, I mean, he kind of stumbled into a brand new empire.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It really shows how these industries are all connected, doesn't it?
It does. One innovation can have these huge ripple effects, and sometimes in ways you'd never predict. I think the Titans, they were so focused on their own little battles, on making money right away, that they missed the bigger picture.
Right, right. And then you have Theodore Roosevelt,
Yes.
who was, well, not afraid to take on big business. How did his presidency affect the Titans and their power?
Roosevelt, he believed in what he called a square deal
Okay.
for everyone. He looked at the Gilded Age, all the inequality, the exploitation, the monopolies. He wanted to change all that.
So he wasn't exactly friendly with the Titans.
No, not really. I mean, he believed in competition, fair competition, not the kind of crushing control that Morgan and the others had. He went after them with antitrust lawsuits. Most famously, Standard Oil.
Rockefeller's company.
Yeah, it was a huge legal battle. And during the trial, it really came out how Standard Oil used all these ruthless tactics to get rid of rivals and control the market.
So what happened?
In 1911, the Supreme Court, they ruled that Standard Oil was an illegal monopoly, and they ordered it to be broken up.
So the Titans, they actually kind of created their own downfall.
In a way, yeah. All that control, it led to a backlash that they couldn't control. I guess there's a limit to how much power anyone can have before things start to change.
It's really a reminder that progress, it's not always a straight line, is it?
No, not at all. The whole story of electricity, from those early days to the rise of guys like Morgan and Ford, it shows that there are always twists and turns, unintended consequences, shifts in power.
It makes me think about how we view innovation today. We love to celebrate these disruptors, but we often forget that they're building on what came before. Even if those foundations were built on, well, maybe not the most ethical practices.
Yeah, I mean, understanding history is important, right? It helps us see the bigger picture, to appreciate how complicated progress really is, and to ask some tough questions about how technology affects society. Are we making the same mistakes as in the past? Or are we learning from them to build a better future, a fairer future?
That's a good question. Definitely something to think about. Well, this has been an incredible journey, from the very beginnings of electricity to the rise and fall of these titans.
Yeah, it's been fascinating.
It's clear that this story, it's so much bigger than just turning on a light.
It is.
Thanks for joining us on this electrifying deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you learned something new about the history of electricity, the rise and fall of these powerful figures, and what it all means for us today. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep questioning. We'll see you next time.